earlier today, the Orange Vomit was scheduled to be questioned under oath in another one of the litigations against him. This time it's the state of New York civil investigation into his business practices. This criminal son of a bitch. I mean, and yet, and I'll get to this in a moment, his cult followers just, they refuse to see that he is a rotten con man. Oh, well, that's to be expected. But anyway, Trump's lawyer has had indicated earlier that he's going to tell the Orange Vomit to be quiet and invoke the Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. It's the whole thing. This whole story of Trump is just so fucking fantastic, so unbelievable, so otherworldly, so nightmarish. Oh, my God. But the Fifth Amendment, what does that mean? I think we all know it means, well, you don't have to give information that might tend to incriminate you. And the way litigation is handled in these fraught times, that probably means everything beyond giving your name and address could be used against you. But how about a quick primer here on what the Fifth is? I mean, seriously, not to be offensive or assume that you don't know what it means, but with all the cases against the orange bastard that have occurred and are continuing to occur, I think this will be the first time that he actually pleads the Fifth Amendment, but I think we need to know. First of all, the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, of course, establishes a bunch of rights that are related to legal proceedings. And the wording in the Fifth is that no one, quote, shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, end quote. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Now, the amendment specifically refers to criminal cases. So how can it apply to a civil investigation, which I believe is what the Orange Vomit investigation, this particular one in New York, I think it's civil litigation. Well, the answer is over time, the Fifth Amendment's protections have been expanded or understood to cover witnesses, not just defendants, but also witnesses in criminal and civil courts and other government settings. So you don't have to be the target of an investigation or the potential criminal. You can just be somebody who's called into court to testify against the son of a bitch who committed the crime. But, of course, we have to assume innocence until guilt is proven, right? Isn't that the way it works here? Sure it does. So let's get back to Trump. The Orange Vomit is being questioned in a civil investigation. And can he claim, as one of his reasons for taking the Fifth, that there's potential in his answers for a further prosecution, only the next time would be criminal? And his lawyers have already asserted that the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, that her civil inquiry is essentially a fact-finding mission for Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's parallel criminal probe. So Trump's lawyers are saying, well, now, wait a second. You're going to be asking my dear, sweet client here, the honorable former president of the United States, although he thinks he's still president, you're going to be asking him questions that could be used against him later. So we're going to tell him, just plead the Fifth and everything. Right? Now, Letitia James, New York's Attorney General, has said that her investigation has already found evidence that the Trump organization committed crimes. They inflated the value of real estate assets to get loans and insurance and tax breaks and all this other shit, and then deflated the value in order, well, to do the same thing. Now, the Orange Vomit, of course, has denied all of this, and he has slammed this investigation the way he has all of his investigations as oh, wait, you go ahead and say it. 3, 2, 1. Right, a witch hunt. by Democrats and liberals and BLM and Antifa and foreigners, right? Meanwhile, other results of Attorney General James's probe led the district attorney in Manhattan to bring criminal tax fraud charges against the Trump Organization and its chief financial officer. You remember that guy who I think was convicted, and isn't he in prison? The defendants all pleaded not guilty in that case, which involves claims of off-the-books. I don't know if it's come to trial yet or not. Off-the-books machinations going on where they're trying to hide the way the money is distributed throughout this criminal enterprise, this mafia family known as the Trump Organization. So, what has Donald Trump's legal team said about all of this? I know you want to know. Well, one of Trump's lawyers, a guy named Ronald Fischetti, has said that unless legal immunity is granted to the Orange Vomit for that session that occurred today, unless it was postponed, that he, Trump's lawyer, will advise the Orange Vomit to invoke the Fifth Amendment, quote, because that's what the law provides, end quote. And he also, this lawyer, Fischetti, also says that publicity surrounding such a choice, is Trump going to or not going to take the Fifth, could harm the Orange Vomit's defense if later there's a criminal charge down the road. Oh, the web we weave, huh? The way we get ourselves just caught here and there and all over the place. Trump has done this to himself. And it continues to get even stickier and more in catching him in the web of his own lies and his crimes. So Trump's lawyer, Fischetti, has said, how can I possibly pick a jury in that case, end quote, the potential criminal case down the road, if it's already been proved that in taking, or it's been assumed that in taking the Fifth Amendment, Trump is a goddamn liar and trying to cover up his crimes. Well, Mr. Fischetti, that's why you're such a high-priced lawyer. You'll figure it out. Now, 3 of Trump's filthy adult children, Donald Jr., the coke-using freak, Ivanka, who lives in some parallel dimension, and Eric, the one who looks like walking cat piss, they've already been questioned. And Eric, the cat piss boy, he invoked the Fifth Amendment more than, you ready? 500 times during his deposition in 2020. That's according to the court filing. 500 times. Now, Donald Jr., the coke user, and Ivanka, the one who lives in a parallel universe, reportedly gave their depositions in this case recently, the one in New York. And it's yet unclear how many times or if they took the Fifth Amendment. Well, let Cousin Mike assure you that these 2 scum bastard grifters, Donald Jr. and Ivanka, yes, you bet your ass they took the Fifth. The only question is how many times. And if you remember years ago, the Orange Vomit himself, like I mentioned a minute ago, repeatedly suggested that only people with something to hide get behind this protection against self-incrimination. He once said, the Orange Vomit did, quote, "The mob takes the Fifth," end quote. Well, you're absolutely right, you filthy bastard. The mob does take the Fifth. And that's why you and your criminal fucking offspring have taken and will continue to take the Fifth Amendment, to hide behind a part of the Constitution that you son of a bitches, you Christian terrorists, would destroy immediately. This is the thing I think that irritates me more than anything else about this mob of son of a bitches, starting with Trump's way all the way down through these mobs of ignorant, savage fuckers who claim to be, MAGA supporters, Trump supporters. The thing that irritates me the most is every goddamn one of them, if they had absolute power, the kind of power that Trump wants and his supporters want him to have, then Fifth Amendment protection, First Amendment protection, gone. That's the thing about religious courts. Now, you know this, and I know this because we have read about it in history. But an Inquisition court, they start from the assumption that your ass is going to be tortured because you're guilty and probably burned at the stake while you scream in the most horrendous pain possible, which parallels what the Christians promise for you after you die, if you don't accept their bullshit, burning. And in these religious courts, there was no such thing as you refuse to answer because you might incriminate yourself. Of course, there was no Fifth Amendment because there was no United States, there was no this, there was no that, blah, 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 blah. But even a parallel thought that somebody could say to a Christian court, I refuse to answer because my answer may prove to you what you want or could be used against me, and then you'll burn me at the stake. Oh, please. That kind of attempt at self-preservation is never allowed in a religious court. It cannot be. The only thing that's allowed in a religious court is the absolute, solid realization that you are guilty. And you're going to have a few brief moments to try to prove your innocence. And you're not going to be able to. Because in a religious court, there is no recourse to anything. What the priests decide is what the sentence will be. So, if these Christian terrorists, and this should be crystal clear to everybody in this country, if these Christian terrorists succeed in getting control of all three branches of government, they already have control of the judicial. If they get control of the other two branches, the first thing to do would be to destroy any chance that they might lose control, which is what they're doing right now in all these state secretaries of state offices and legislatures and so on and so forth. That's the foundation being laid to make sure that the power that they collect or assume after this next election can never be taken from them. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.